in Jerry Palm's playoff projections, a shakeup in the college football playoff rankings this week. Georgia just destroying the number one team. Ohio State, do they get docked for only beating Northwestern by 14? TCU just keeps winning. I mean, they trail in the fourth quarter every game, and they keep winning. And so does Michigan. But strength of schedule, not quite there yet. So Jerry Palm, in his very latest college football playoff projections, has a rematch. Georgia, Tennessee in one semi, and Ohio State, TCU in the other. So let's get Jerry Palm in here. He has a projection of every single bowl game, including the college football playoff semifinals. Jerry, let's start with Tennessee. You have them projected to still be in the playoff despite that loss. Does that mean that you think Tennessee controls their own fate the rest of the way, just win out in the regular season, and they should feel good about getting in?
No, not necessarily. They're going to need some help in other places for sure. But I've actually had that game projected ever since Tennessee beat Alabama. So that's not a new projection this week because I had the Tennessee loss at Georgia already baked in. But Tennessee's going to need some help. You know, if they have an undefeated Big Ten champion and an undefeated Big 12 champion, and you've got, say, an upset in the SEC championship game, then they're going to be out. And it's possible that the committee could view a 12-1 conference champion as more deserving or better than an 11-1 Tennessee, even with only that loss to Georgia. So it's not a definite thing. I just think that 11-1 is going to stand up as the rest of the season plays out, and they end up getting into the fourth spot of the playoff.
Still a bunch of possibilities, but we always like to say, oh, that team lost, they're done. Let's cross them off. Clemson and Alabama, those are the two teams this week that many of us are like, okay, we can scratch them off the list. No chance. In your opinion, are Clemson and Alabama both done?
I wouldn't say Clemson is because there's still a lot that can happen, but they would have to win out, get to 12-1, and then see how that shakes out. Their strength of schedule is going to be a problem. The ACC is an okay league. Clemson stands way out in front of everybody else, and then you've got like 4 or 5 teams that you could rank between something like 15 and maybe 40. So it's probably going to be tough for Clemson at 12-1, but they have a chance. Alabama, they don't even control their own destiny in the SEC West anymore. They need help just to win the division, and help that's unrealistic. So I think you could, for all intents and purposes, say that Alabama is done.
Yeah, Alabama would need LSU to lose a couple of times and also win out to get into that SEC championship game. You've got a bunch of teams in the Pac-12 that just continue to win. There are 3 teams right now that could end up with 1 loss and Pac-12 champions: USC, UCLA, and Oregon. Will there be a spot for a 1-loss Pac-12 team?
Well, again, it depends. 12-1 is going to be strong. That league is good at the top this year, so you're going to see some higher quality wins from the 12-1 champion, whichever team it is. But if it's Oregon, there's kind of a problem because everybody remembers the one, a 46-point loss to Georgia. So let's say Georgia gets upset in the conference championship game. They're 12-1, but not an SEC champion. Oregon is 12-1 and the Pac-12 champion. Guess what? Georgia is the ceiling for Oregon. So they need Georgia to be number 1, and they have to try as best as they can to erase that memory. But, there's another problem. Tennessee also played Georgia and didn't lose by 46. So, even 11-1 Tennessee might be too much for 12-1 Oregon. So, but I think USC would have the best chance to make the playoff at 12-1 because of the strength of their schedule and the fact that their loss is a 1-point loss at Utah.
Okay, so you're projecting, again, still Georgia and Tennessee in one semifinal. In the other, it's Ohio State, and TCU is the new team in this week. That leads me to believe you think TCU is going to win out. But let's talk Big Ten for right now, because it seems like it's either going to be Ohio State or Michigan. But what are the chances that both of those teams get in?
Well, the losing team in the Big Ten championship game finishes 11-1. Michigan's strength of schedule is dreadful, and that's a big problem. Tennessee doesn't have that problem at 11-1, but Michigan does. And if they're competing with 12-1 conference champions from any of these other leagues, strength of schedule becomes a big problem for Michigan. It's less of a problem for Ohio State, especially as Notre Dame rebounds this season because that's one of their non-conference wins. But for Michigan, I don't see a realistic path to a playoff at 11-1.
So more realistic that if Michigan beats Ohio State and goes on to win it, that Ohio State would be maybe an at-large team. They would have a better opportunity to do that than a Michigan. Let's move on.
But I wouldn't call it likely, though.
Not likely, but more of a possibility for Ohio State to get in as an at-large than Michigan, because Michigan did play really the weakest non-conference schedule that you could possibly put together. But they have a few more tests coming up, including a game against an Illinois team that's probably going to drop out of the rankings after they lost this past week. Let's move on to the college football playoff rankings and how you see the top 10 coming together tomorrow, because we will see a shift with number 1 Tennessee losing. How do you see it coming down tomorrow night?
Well, last week I projected Georgia, Ohio State, and Tennessee 1, 2, 3. I think the committee will finally hit that one. I was just a week early on it. But Tennessee should still stay in the top 3. I think what you have is a group of 3 at the top of the rankings that have set themselves apart from the rest of the field. And then you've got another group behind that with Michigan and TCU, and Clemson used to be part of that group. They won't be now, but I have Oregon at number 6. LSU moving up to 7. I thought they were too high at 10, but it's kind of hard to argue with them now, ahead of the Alabama team they just beat. USC and Ole Miss rounding out the top 10, and it's chaos behind that.
And you know what? I'm just going to throw this one out there. We didn't have this question prepared, but seeing Ole Miss at number 10 and 1 loss, they can win out and be just like Tennessee, 11-1, but not win their division. Would they have an opportunity to get an at-large bid?
I would say probably not, because the loss is LSU, who's going to have at best 2 losses. And I don't think that that's going to be a problem for Tennessee. So really the worst case scenario for Tennessee is for LSU to win the league. And they're the 3rd-ranked SEC team. They really need Georgia to win the league. But, you know, Mississippi's loss isn't to an undefeated team. And I think that's going to hold them back. All
right, Jerry Palm with us here on HQ. Joins us each and every Monday with brand new bowl projections and college football playoff projections, rankings projections as well. Here are the other New Year's 6 games. We saw the 4 teams that he has making the college football playoff. Michigan and USC in the Rose Bowl, LSU, Texas, Sugar Bowl, Clemson, Alabama, usually either a national championship game or a semifinal game, has them matching up in the Rose Bowl, and Cincinnati getting the auto bid from the group of 5 against Oregon. Some other notable bowl projections: Notre Dame, Mississippi State in the Gator Bowl, and Tulane in the Birmingham Bowl against Purdue.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.